What's up, everyone? This is Chase Offield. You're listening to the Offshore Explorer podcast. I have Steve Lassley call in for an interview today, and it was awesome. The guy's a treasure trove of information. I think everyone's familiar with who he is and his resume. He's Hall of Fame, IGFA Hall of Fame captain. He's won multiple Bisbees, multiple Gold Cups, highest earning captain in tournament earnings of all time, and just an awesome guy. He's really cool with sharing some super inside dope, talking about some crazy spots I've never even heard about, and just sharing some awesome information. So if you're into fishing and you're into Southern California history, Steve Lassley's the guy, and he's just a great guy and so awesome to call in and give some of his time to share information. Hope you guys loved the episode. It was really fun to talk with Steve, and hope you all enjoy. All right. Got Steve Lassley on today. You guys all know Steve, or most of you know Steve. If you fish, you know Steve. Guy's won every tournament pretty much, I think, on the West Coast that there's ever been. And IGFA Hall of Fame captain. Your credentials, we could sit here all day going through them. But thanks, Steve, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Chase.
I was just like going through, I was reading like the IGFA kind of press release they did for you, and some other articles you've done and stuff, just to brush up on your resume. But man, I think with this podcast, like, I'm more interested in focusing on kind of the Southern California stuff. And, you know, you're one of the very few guys, I think, that when your name gets brought up, I think everyone has like the utmost respect for your fishing career. Probably, you know, I think a big part of it has to do because you started out commercial and then moved into sport fishing. But I'm interested in kind of focusing on the early tournament days and kind of getting into your thoughts on what made you so successful in fishing tournaments, and how you prepared for tournaments and picked your crews and that, you know, that whole thing, and then get into swordfish as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a lot. So I started. I kind of got into the yachts in a roundabout way when the drift net started up. I tried a little bit of the drift netting, and I just didn't care for it. And I was a harpoon fisherman primarily, and I did a little bit of lift pull tuna fishing, but not that much. And as it kind of progressed, the gill nets did. I could see that, you know, we were going to get pushed to the wayside, at least for a temporary time. So I hopped on the dorsal Elmer Hare's 87 Ditmar, Elmer Hare's boat, and I fished on that for a few seasons, and I kind of liked the yacht thing, and some opportunities came up to go to Mexico. So I hopped on with the Creans. They had a little 38 bluefin that I took down and was able to fish the blue marlin season down in Cabo. And that was kind of my start in the marlin field. And I think probably for me, what was the number one thing that made us so successful is I was used to looking in binoculars for 8 hours a day and never really putting them down, you know, and then, you know, God blessed me with some really good eyesight, which I just saw a lot of stuff people couldn't see. And So we primarily went into the sight fishing. We weren't too much worried about what was happening behind the boat. And I think the other thing that made me so successful was I surrounded myself with, my best friends who were very good fishermen, like Pete Grossbeck. And I had Mark Muller in the early days, and then we brought Jim Kingsmill on later on. And, Andy Horner and all my guys were all fishermen, and they all worked real hard, and they were all dedicated, and were willing to put the time in that it took, and then the same thing with the owners. I had owners that were very dedicated to fishing and really wanted to be successful at what we did. And they kind of cut me loose, they let me pre-fish, which was really important to know where there just wasn't one school of fish, where there was 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 schools of fish, and knew what time of day, each spot was going to show. And we kind of even had it down sometimes, not always, but where the big ones were and the little ones were. And when it was time to release a whole bunch, we'd go where the little ones were. And if we needed to kill a big one, we kind of knew where the bigger fish were hanging out too.
That's interesting, because I was looking at one of your posts the other day, and you guys, I think the photo was you're getting ready to gaff a big one that you said you had to race in, and lines out, I think, had been called while you guys were still fighting the fish. So I imagine in that tournament they must have had a cutoff for getting to the scales. But just in my experience with the marlin tournaments around Catalina, for us at least, like, getting a big one was just pure luck. And I'm interested in how you kind of were able to determine where you thought big ones were versus kind of like a group of smaller ones.
I don't think you could really do that. I think what it was when we were pre-fishing, there was days we could have had tremendous numbers of fish. And when we were pre-fishing, it was just the boys out, and we were, fishing from dark to dark, literally. And, but we'd go into an area and we would check it out, and we'd find a bunch of fish, and you just gauge their size by the size of their tails.
Okay.
And you take notes of it, and if you found, and like I said, it wasn't 100% of the time, but there were plenty of times that we could figure out where the big ones were and the little ones were. And, if it was a release tournament, we would definitely go to where all the little ones were. And then if we needed a big one, we'd blast off to where we thought we could catch a big one. But, sometimes a lot of times they were mixed also, but there definitely were seasons where we could figure that out.
And those early gold, like the early gold cups, I saw it just on your post today. Someone commented, what was the first tournament you won, or what was the first tournament ever? And it was I was looking at the T-shirts and the pictures, and it said NCMC Daiwa Billfish Tourney, and it looked like you guys were at Dana or something. What was that your first tournament you ever fished, or was that the first tournament you ever won?
That was the first tournament I ever fished, and we actually won it. It was the National Coalition of Marine Conservation.
Okay.
And it was a north-south tournament, and we were on the dorsal, and an 87-foot boat with a 40-foot swordfish plank on it. And everybody in the tournament agreed to let us leave the plank on for the tournament. We had the Tories on. I can't remember the name of their boat. Joe Torrey and that whole group. I can't remember the name of their boat. They were pretty prominent in the sport fishing industry also at the time, and did a marlinier. But we found a swordfish late in the day, and we went over, and first one I ever threw a bait at, and the thing ate it. And we had it on the wrong gear. And just as we were going to gaff it, the guy lifted up the rod somehow, and he threw the reel out of gear, and we didn't know it. We thought the fish had pulled off. And it was swimming along just below the surface. And I climbed out on the plank, and I got on the undercarriage, and I had my leg wrapped around the undercarriage and my arm, and I basically free gaffed it.
No way.
then we put it on the boat, and uh, we found out that the thing was still hooked.
No way.
We didn't know it until we started walking the fish down the side. It was pretty funny.
That's incredible. What a start to your tournament career. Jeez. Yeah, I bet those guys were like, when they heard that story later, were wishing that they hadn't allowed you to use the plank.
Yep.
So going back then to just like the tournament strategy. So obviously it sounds like the pre-fishing was important to you, but back then, like, were you like the sea surface temperature and all that stuff, which guys have moved on to being a big focus on now? Was any of that stuff even on your radar, or was that technology around then, or were you getting dope from friends, or what was your, like, when you were like headed out for a Gold Cup, like what was the approach to kind of mapping the zone?
Yeah, I back then I didn't know a ton of the people that were fishing. I just knew a few guys, like Gene Grimes and Billy Miyagawa, and we kind of came up with a little group that there was Tommy Nykirk, after Gene had passed away, and Beak was part of it, and we kind of all shared information, and we kind of, kept it to ourselves. And then primarily, I got some information too from some sport boat guys that were good friends of mine. Rick Dosberg, because he had a swordfish background and some marlin. He owns the Fury. They're out of Dana still, and he always was a good source of information. And the guys in Newport Beach, I knew them, and I knew some guys out of Pedro. And they traveled pretty diverse areas, up there around Santa Barbara Island, and sometimes I'd get some dope from the west end of Catalina in towards Pedro, which would be the 499, 260 outside 267 area. And but mostly, really honestly, we looked at everything in the grid pre-fishing. But to answer your question about the sea surface temperature, I'd been using ocean imaging since about 85. They used to send me some stuff over my weather fax over an old 208 paper machine. And so I did have some connection, and they used to send me sheets before I'd leave. It's super advanced now, but we didn't ever use it to try to find the fish. We more used it to, once we found the fish, we would look at the picture and see what water they were in. And then based on, if they were up next to a break, or the water was going to change in 3 or 4 miles, we'd run up and we'd check the edge and see if they crossed the edge. And, I had, before there was plotters, I had a chart up on my overhead that folded down that had a full 18740 chart in it, and with a Lexan over the top and grease pencils. And I'd pretty much draw all the breaks on that and put all my notes on the Lexan, and we could see the way that the breaks were moving as the day went on.
That's so cool. And one thing like we've learned with the tagging is, like, we did some of the spot tags up here when we would tag the fish, and then, the next day we would get a ping. They would be like, down off San Diego or something. And I always think it's interesting where sometimes the fish up here will stay like on a spot, like, I don't know, wherever, say up off the West End or something, and they'll stay in the zone for 5 or 6 days. So, like, I guess when you're pre-fishing, you find a spot and you can get back there when the tournament starts. But were you seeing a lot of the, like, when you found a spot pre-fishing, would the fish be just moving through, do you think, or was the bait and the water temp kind of holding them to that zone, or what do you think was going on there?
Yeah, there was a lot to it, and I'm super structure oriented too. So I kind of liked when the breaks or the water would push over a spot, and usually if it was a slow moving piece of water and it moved over some structure kind of slowly. They'd kind of hang out there, kind of stay with the bait and everything. But probably for me, the biggest thing, we felt that a very high percentage of the time, the bulk of the fish, at least on the surface and the way that we could catch them, they moved northwest every day, you know, like 3 to 5 to, 7 miles or 2 miles. If it was a big volume of fish that was pushing through. So we never really had to wander too much. We kind of always knew what direction we had to go to stay on them for the most part, and then they'd get in certain areas and they'd just disappear.
That's interesting.
But then they'd usually pop up somewhere again to the west.
Yeah.
And we knew that was pretty accurate. If they did bounce to the east, it usually wasn't much, and they usually turn around and continue that west-northwest pattern again, or north-northwest pattern again.
One of the methods that's been really successful for us in the tuna club tournaments has been just trolling teasers only and no hooks, just because a couple of reasons. Like one, the hookup ratio or to landing on trolling a jig is pretty terrible. But if you're able to drop back a bait to those guys and get them on live bait, like it's almost 100%. And obviously casting and stuff is works pretty high rate too. But were you guys doing that? I know with Anthony you don't troll jigs around when you guys are out here fishing, but were you doing that back then too, or were you trolling jigs?
No, when we first started doing it was probably in the mid to late 80s. We would be in Mag Bay and there'd be so many marlin, and the people get burned out on catching them that we started trolling lures around with no hooks in them. And these marlin would pile on it and pile on it and pile on it and pile on it. And, finally, after the fish was on it for a pretty long period of time, some guy invariably would go out and pitch a bait back and hook it, and everybody would have a good time. And then, we'd troll the lures, wherever we were going, to a wahoo spot or a grouper spot, and the marlin would pile on. So we got thinking, man, that we aren't missing doing that. And so we started doing it. I'd have to look back in my notes, but I know for sure the first time we were doing it in California, it had to be maybe like 1990, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And the very first one was we were heading over to a tournament, and I was telling Pete about it, what I wanted to try, and he wasn't super wound up on it, and we had a fish come up on the short corner, and we wound it away from it, and he pitched his bait back, and it wouldn't get off the lure, and he's yelling at me, "See, I told you this wouldn't work. I'll never forget this." And he's yelling at me, and I could see the leader hanging out of the fish's mouth as it was trying to continue to eat the lure, and I was yelling down at Pete, "Just put it in gear, just put it in gear."
Oh man, that's so
we caught that one. It was a real big one. We caught it real quick, and my wife actually caught it, and I think that was 1990. Yeah. So we do that a lot. Yeah. It's very successful.
I think too, like, when they obviously, like there's no hooks and they're not getting stung by the hook. I mean, those things they'll stay back there. We started having the problem where, I usually had the job of watching the jigs, and I would have a fish come up, and I'd get my bait in the water so quick that I would drop it back a lot of times too past the fish, and it would follow it all the way. As the guys were bringing in the teasers, the fish would follow the jigs all the way up to the swim step, and then there was always the guy who was the last one stumbling into the cockpit to get drop back would catch the fish because he was just sitting right there. I'm sure you saw that a lot.
We did have that bite us a couple of times. One time was a bridge teaser, and the fish got tangled up in it and smoked a couple 100 yards of line, and we wound up breaking it off. And then we had the same thing happen on a rod and reel that we had a lure on, and that was in a tournament. It was a real big one, and it came up and bit. And I'm looking at Pete, and sometimes it gets a little heated occasionally, not too much, only when something really bad's happening. And I was yelling, "I thought there weren't any hooks in that." And Pete He goes, there's not. And we wound up fighting the fish for a really long time, and we wound up losing it. But sometimes they get balled up in it a little bit for sure. But
yeah,
no, it's super effective, and it is fun. It's very visual, with them back there chasing it, and watching them eat it. That's very fun.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of guys. I mean, you got to have a good crew, obviously, with all marlin fishing. I mean, obviously, you would be the first to attest to having a good crew. I think you said it earlier, but if you're not sure you got one guy that's totally paying attention when you don't have hooks, and it's not the best method, because those fish a lot of times they're barely showing, and they're just back there skirting around, and you got a guy that's farting around fiddling with something, and that fish just pops up for a minute and goes away. You're gonna miss that one.
Yeah, no, whether it's in the binoculars or, those are the guys that I would always bring. I mean, none of our guys were fiddling around, man. I mean, very, very intense. I would rather work myself to death for 12 hours and be successful than go out there, and it's way more fun catching them than driving around and watching other people catch them. And I think all of our guys had I know all of our guys had the exact same attitude, man. If we had a guy that was watching the lures, he was on it, and tuning those lures up. Anytime the boat changed directions, we usually had Petey in the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
And, every time I'd turn the boat, he'd readjust the pattern, make sure everything was swimming perfect all the time, and, getting the stuff back. But I'd say probably 95% of what we caught was off the bow.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna ask you that. I was wondering what your what like the percentage was versus bow versus like fish raise. So would you, like, on those early Gold Cup days, for example, what are you're running like a 5 or 6 guy crew? You got like four guys in the binos all day, or what was the strategy with glassing?
Yeah, so the Gold Cup on the Colleen, the first one, there was Mark Muller and Pete Grossbeck up in the tower, and I was on the bridge, and there weren't very many fish in that tournament. There was only a few. Mm-hmm. And I found 2 in the glasses from the bridge. Was really greasy, slick day up by Santa Barbara Island. And we hooked. Mark and Pete were probably the best 2 guys I ever had, as far as getting, if there was 2, they doubled up almost every time. They were really, really, really on it.
No way.
And they hooked both those, and we caught them. And I think Mark's was the biggest one in that one. And then in the second Gold Cup, we were same thing. We were between Catalina and San Clemente Island, though, in a place we call the Hog Hole. A lot of big fish hang out there for whatever reason. And I found a couple of feeders, and we spun on that, and those guys hooked too. And I think Pete had the biggest one that time.
Do you think when it comes to baiting stripies, like would feeders, would it go feeders, tailors, sleepers in terms of like most wanting to bite? Like I've found like a lot of times we'll get on sleepers that won't bite. Or did you have any like tactics with sleepers that worked better than others, or anything like that?
Yeah, we did a lot of times when the when they weren't biting, and you'd watch the baits hit the water from the tower, and you'd see they were kind of lethargic, and the marlin weren't all that fired up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Bart Miller, I think, told me something that was the best. This predator prey instinct so strong, it's like a cat. First time you pull a string in front of it, it kind of swipes out a little bit, and the second time you pull it, it gets a little more agitated, and the third or fourth time you pull it by it, it's losing its mind. Marlin are the exact same way.
Okay.
And so if we had guys hook the baits different, and some of the guys we'd have one guy like nose hook it sideways, one guy nose hook it from the inside of the mouth up, another guy butt hook the bait, and more often than not, the sleepers wanted that butt hooked bait. I mean, if they were really going to eat, if their tails were all super bright blue, you could a lot of times you could almost tell when one was going to bite or not. Real dark tail, not
Yeah.
so much. If you found a group of three and one had a purple glowing tail, fluorescent glowing, pretty much that one was going to bite. Especially when you get the multiple fish and they got that you know um, competitive instinct going. And so long as the bait didn't, if you had guys make good casts and throw over the top of the fish and the
Uh-huh.
bait swam away from the boat,
Uh-huh.
pretty much that one with the bright tail was going to eat. And every now and again, he'd talk one of his buddies into eating too.
Yeah. That's awesome. When did the sonar really become a tool that you started to fiddle with and use to your advantage, like in the marlin tournaments?
I used to run Tom Flager's Hanapa back in the 87, 88, 89, I think. And I got pretty good with a sonar there, and we were just starting to figure out some of the blue marlin with it, and a little bit of the striped marlin up in the Gulf. One year we were fishing for world records, and we figured out what a great tool it was. And then we really didn't get to use it too much again until probably the mid 90s, probably 95, 94, 95. We started getting really good with it. And by about 98, it was pretty devastating for sure.
I was reading on an interview you did with in the bite, and it said that when you were kind of still learning how to read the sonar, that you took like a big tuna and hung it underneath the boat to kind of get an idea of what that looked like on the sonar. Is that something obviously that you did? And um, that had to been um, that had to been like almost an unfair advantage once you guys were dialed on that, and nobody else was.
Yeah, Paul Farr talked me into doing that on the Hanapod when we had the first CH-14 searchlight sonar ever put in out here, and that was on Flager's boat. And Paul went with me for several weeks, 3 or 4 weeks or something, and yeah, he had me hang a tuna, like 150-pound tuna, and we drove at it from a bunch of different angles. We didn't know how it was hanging, but just to see,
Yeah.
it helped us tune the thing up so we could see what was going on. And then I can't remember what year it was. It had to be like 2000, and one of the last years we fished tournaments, 2009 or 2010, when all the stripers got up off the west end of Catalina. At that point, it was an unfair advantage. That was one of the few years that we had maybe 40% of the fish behind, maybe 30% of the fish behind the boat, but we'd get some sonar hits,
Mm-hmm.
and we wouldn't drive right over to them and cast at them. We tried doing that, and it didn't work good. We tried driving over them, and we got a couple bites behind the boat. But what we started doing was paralleling them until they'd come up feeding on the sours. So we'd keep them about 200 or 300 feet away from the boat,
Uh-huh.
and we would just kind of follow them, and the best we could. And then when they'd come up feeding on the sours, we kind of knew about where they were, and we'd charge over and throw baits at them and hook them. But in that tournament, we were very, very successful with it. And it was a 3-day tournament. I think it was late in the afternoon on the second day. I told Anthony we had to turn it off because it just wasn't fair.
I remember. I think it was around that time. Can't remember exactly when it was, but I remember seeing you guys one time, like doing whatever you guys were doing with the sonar, and I didn't know what you guys were doing, and I remember like seeing you darting around, and everyone was kind of just fishing the traditional methods because they're obviously just fishing the zone, but I'd see you guys casting and be like looking, and didn't see any fish, and all of a sudden you got like guys hooked up, and I was like, what in the hell? Like, how are they seeing stuff we're not seeing? And then obviously we understood then after a while it was sonar. And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, Dad, we got to get a sonar, and he wound up getting like, some badass sonar on our boat, but none of us knew how to work it. And, I don't, that is a hard tool to, I think you have to spend a lot of time behind one of those to understand what you're looking at. Don't you think?
Yeah, the newer ones are a lot more user friendly and more simple. But I was super fortunate just from all the days on the water that I got to do. With all the operations, I was fishing a lot, man, and I was also able to get in some super target rich environments, and
Mm-hmm.
Mag Bay and Cabo, and so when we got up in the California region, there was no learning curve. It was, we, like you're saying, we had it pretty doggone dialed in, and it kept getting better and better and better. And about the time we quit, we had it down pretty doggone good.
Using the sonar that down in Mag Bay, like if you were probably wanting to learn how to find a stripey or what a stripey looked like on a sonar, that's got to just be like the most epic spot to do it, right?
Oh, absolutely. No place like it on the planet, I don't think. And what was really always amazing, it was really neat because Mag Bay, in the early years, there wasn't so many boats and you didn't have to run around and charge around. You just wander over to it. You see 3 or 4 meatballs, and just kind of wander over towards one. And the
Mm-hmm.
whole time you're wandering over there, if you're trying to learn how to get better versus just trying to catch a fish, you're tuning up the electronics and you're twisting them up and you're sending the range out, seeing when you're finally going to see them, and you're playing with the tilt, trying to figure out what angle and what range and how much gain, and you're messing with all the controls the whole time, knowing you're going to get there and nobody's going to charge over there and put them down, and you could just very calmly go over there. But what was always amazing is so many times the bait ball and the birds, you'd see them up on the top, and the main body of fish would be 100 feet or 200 feet away from that. You'd see the meatball, and you'd see 8 or 10 hits or 6 hits or whatever on the meatball, but east or west or north or south or whatever, a couple 100 feet away, there's 40 or 50, and they're not
Oh,
even anywhere.
really?
Oh yeah, they're not even on the meatball. And so we'd get in areas where people would be charging around, and we'd be walking over there, and these guys would come charging up, and they'd charge over to the meatball, and we'd turn right, because we'd see the meat, down below them, and we'd go over, and there wouldn't even be any birds or anything, and they wouldn't hook any, and we'd triple or quadruple up or something. Yeah, it is a great tool for sure.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was like you say, now they're way more user friendly. I know that Omni is. I was talking with Carmine and Carmine Galati and Pat Healy recently about it, and down in Los Sueños, the Triple Crown is the big tournament down there, and I was asking, I don't know, I think I might have been asking Tony about it, and he was saying like the guys, all the top boats down there, like that are contenders, are running Omni, and I think it's like just same with stripies or sailfish or whatever. I mean, I think being able to see, because they don't get all the surface life down there like you get here, and being able to just see that stuff underwater is such a mega advantage now.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I've been running the sonars for the Galati team down there in the Los Sueños, and a handful of tournaments, I think 4 or something now. And
Of course.
we've been pretty successful with it. I'm just starting to get good with that Omni.
Uh-huh.
There's still some parts of that CH37. It's not as user friendly by any means, but there's that CH37 still a doggone good unit, man. And we crushed them on the 250s and the 300s also. But I think the user friendly part of that Omni definitely is a game changer for sure. But what's really funny is Anthony, the owner of the bed company, Anthony Shea,
Mm-hmm.
he asked me when I was we were given a seminar one time. I think we were at Dana Landing or something. And he asked me, what would you rather have? What would you rather not have? Gyro stabilized binoculars or a sonar?
Yeah.
And still to this day, I can't answer that question. I mean, if you're only fishing for one,
I literally have that question written down here on my notepad and was just going to ask you, because that's that to me is the greatest question I could ask you is, like, if you had to give up one, like, it's like cutting off your arm or your leg. I mean, a guy like you, I mean, imagine, the amount of fish you've seen with your eyes in the binos has got to be, extraordinary. But having that sonar is such like a badass weapon too. The gyro changed the game around here for sure, right?
Oh yeah, but what was really funny is I was so used to fishing with just a good pair of Zeiss. And,
Mm-hmm.
we used to take really good care of our Zeiss and send them out every year. Every winter we'd send them out and get them tuned up, and they were pretty perfection. And there was a lot of times, I mean, Jimmy's a freak. I mean, he'll outspot almost everybody most of the time, but most other guys that were really good in the glasses, I could still hold my own in the Zeiss.
Like the 750Bs, the OG Zeiss.
Yeah, but the problem is I used to hold those up 7-8 hours a day, so I got really good with them.
Uh-huh.
But and there was plenty of days that I outfished the guys with the gyros like substantially. But anymore now, I got lazy, and now I pick up a pair of 750s, and I can't even. I see why we whomped everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't hold them still either. And I grew up doing that, man. I got 30 years holding those things slapped up to my face, and I see why everybody struggled with it.
Well, I think too another one of the, I don't know, it's not a downside of gyro, because it's probably a good thing, but you're seeing the fish so much further away, and it's like it takes a long time to like, when you come out of the glasses and you're like, okay, we're close now, and then you come out and you're like, wait, I thought he was right here, and it's still a quarter mile away or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's like one of the little difficult things. Like, do you guys, what's your tactic with that? Like, you got a guy that spots a sleeper or Taylor way off. How do you walk in on the fish?
We get everybody on the boat looking for them until we figure they're about 4 boat lengths away, and then typically we'll have somebody that's eyes aren't fried yet that's still got good eyeballs to get out of the glasses, because the thing might sink out and squirt over 20 feet, and if you don't have 3 or 4 guys looking for it, you might lose it if the conditions are tough. So we get everybody get locked on it, and invariably 2 or 3 guys will lose it and 1 guy will pick it up, and so we get everybody looking at it till we figure it's till you start looking down. If you're not looking down, it's still a ways out there, man. I mean, if you're not physically looking down in the glasses and it's in the center of your glasses, it's still a bit out there. And then we usually get 1 guy or 2 guys, or the guy on the, we'll put 1 guy when we start getting close out on the bow, and because sometimes the guy on the bow can see him better because the angle changes, and
yeah.
So we'll usually have 1 guy out on the bow and 1 guy on the bridge looking eyeball until 1 or 2 guys have it visually without the binoculars, and then everybody gets out of the binoculars. And then guys scurry around to whatever their battle station is, typically 2 or 3 guys on the bow, 1 guy in the cockpit and a guy driving, something like that.
Nice. And then I'm sure you guys have seen some, some fish pretty far away, like on a glassy day or whatever. Like, what do you think of the furthest fish off you guys have ever spotted?
Well, it's pretty easy to tell. So on the plotter, you're doing your track line, and we haven't seen. You see swordfish at a little bit over 2 miles, and for me and my guys, and we got some pretty doggone good guys.
Yeah.
You see something 2 miles away, driven on a line, on a plotter, and measuring the distance. That's pretty doggone near maxed out, man. I mean, you can see birds, you can see legitimate birds at 7 miles repeatedly. Um, you see they just looked like an ant above the horizon. You know, you barely see them once or twice, or you might see a porpoise jump at like 6 miles, and that's measured on the plotter. That's no guessing or no. It's
Interesting.
repeatability. Yeah, that's the one bad thing is you see a bird pile at 7 miles,
Uh-huh.
and if you're trolling, that's almost an hour to get there, and if you're trolling, it's
Yeah.
almost an hour back, and that just ate up 1/4 of your day, or 1/5 of your day, and so, and if you pick up and run, I mean, best case scenario, it's 24 minutes each direction. Well, it still cost you an hour.
That's interesting. That's a really good. That's something I never thought about. So let's say in that scenario, you guys spot a sortie way off. Are you are you gonna pick up? Are you gonna pick up and run? And then how long does a swordfish like? How long will he stay up there? I mean, like they're not gonna stay up there indefinitely. Like what do you think? What's your idea on like a swordfish? How long from when he comes up to chill on the surface? How long does he usually up for?
Yeah, it could be minutes, and it could be as much as an hour and a half or 2 hours. I
Okay.
know when we were fishing with the harpoon,
Mm-hmm.
I've ran well over an hour because where we were, it was dead. We weren't catching anything anyway, and some other pilot would find one, and my pilot would go over and go, "Okay, I got it." And I ran. I'm pretty sure I ran like an hour and 20 minutes or something to
No way.
get to them. Yeah, but that wasn't common. But
Yeah.
and we had, and then some of the time we had 2 airplanes, so I'd keep one guy on top of the fish, and then I'd have the other airplane sweeping the boat, and then we'd still have 3 guys in the binoculars
Mm-hmm.
as we're running for an hour and 20 minutes. So it wasn't like we were taking ourselves out of the game running, and
Yeah.
we'd get there and kill the fish, and sometimes that made our day, but yeah, sometimes it's only minutes, and sometimes it could be well over an hour, and I'll hear of one, and I might go get there 4 hours later, and the thing might have gone down, and it might come back up again, like if there's another tide or something, 4, 5, 6 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta think sometimes it's the same fish,
Yeah, probably. I mean, well, that's a good transition, I guess, into swordfish, and I'm interested in just kind of like how you've seen the swordfish fishery develop over the years, and now this deep dropping thing is starting to take off, and it's really there's been a lot of opinions about the deep dropping, and I'm sure you got some good opinions on it. But when did you first start commercial sword fishing? And then I'm sure when you kind of transitioned with Anthony into doing the more rod and reel stuff, having that commercial background was obviously huge.
I started in '77 with the Jock Albright.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had a little Vega called the Ranger, a 37 that I tried to buy. And that's a whole different story. But I fished with him we fished some albacore, and then we fished swordfish for probably 5 or 6 weeks. And then I started running the agitator shortly after that. And that was the biggest year of all time, was 78.
Just in terms of number of fish?
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. There was, I wouldn't even want to guess, but I do know that typically there was 150 to 200 harpoon permits in all of the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And in 78, there was like 1,700 or 1,800. Everything that floated, guys were out there on skipjacks with diving boards on them.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding you. It was stupid.
Oh my God.
If we only saw 3 or 4 or 5 in a day, it was a bad day. And
Jesus.
They were everywhere, man. So I got to learn a lot from that. And, those were the highs. And then when I quit fishing for a number of years and did mostly marlin, and then I came back in about 90, I can't remember, 96 or something. I did it for another year. And then I came back about 2003 and started doing it full time again for about 15 years. And when I came back in 2003, it was starting to wind down. There was probably 70 or 80 permits there.
Okay.
But I kind of think that, and I don't know this, that, the long line pressure certainly had a huge effect. The drift nets, people don't know how many fish those guys caught, man. Those guys crushed them.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of 20, 30, 40, 50 fish nights. I know Tim Hauser, your brother, bought the boat that he used to captain after he quit commercial fishing. I know he had 117 in one night, was his best night. And he was a stud. He was that guy's a true legend. And he knew how to catch everything better than anybody, for sure. Timmy did, but
he was doing that on that Aaron Marie, right? That was
he was running that the last year. He had quit commercial fishing, but certainly the drift nets put a tremendous amount of pressure on him. Certainly the long lines put a tremendous amount of pressure on him. I don't think the harpoon fishery really depleted the resource. As far as this deep drop thing goes, I think our water's changed quite a bit, and it's harder to find the same conditions we used to fish, which is minimal current. I think our currents have picked up a little bit. They're a little stronger now than they used to be, slightly. And so it's harder to find that water that the fish really like. We can still find it with imagery. And then I think there's way, 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 way more swordfish still around than everybody knows. We find pretty good numbers. We've had years where we found 50 only fish in a very minimal amount of days on Anthony's boat. We found over 50 fish a couple of years.
That's still a good amount.
Yeah, that's just a few guys in binoculars. If we would have had the airplane and fishing really hard, there was a couple of years we would have had over 200 fish for sure if we were fishing full time, which was a good season. Not a great season, but a good season. And they're definitely more spread out. I mean, it's really funny. I'm sitting here, because we're doing that 10-day fishing picture challenge thing. And I always kept notes. I got binders and binders and binders full of my notes, and just my swordfish notes alone. I was sitting here looking at them, and most of the areas where we had the really big scores, people don't even go to. They don't even fish. I'm wondering, what in the heck would happen if we were deep dropping out in some of those zones,
That's what I was talking with somebody recently. I don't even remember who. And I was thinking, like, with the deep drop thing becoming popular and guys, as they start to explore new zones and maybe stumble on some of those like kind of little honey holes that you guys know about, or, they find on their own. I think, right now everyone's just fishing the like super popular spots. I mean, Avalon Bank and the 152 and, this Newport Canyon, all the basic, like super easy shit. But, I think there's got to be some super mega ledges and stuff where there's got to be fish piled up that guys haven't even touched yet.
Yeah, Jock was very, very close. I mean, I'd be happy to share notes with people that wanted to see it, but Jock was very, very close where he hit that stuff up there at Santa Cruz. There's some mother loads up there and north of there too, and then offshore, San Nick, and Santa Barbara Island and Cherry Bank and, all those areas that especially later in the year, when that stuff was really starting to bite. One of the things, my comments is once these bluefin leave, if they do leave, and all these guys that are running around in all the Parkers and, all the center console boats that are doing so well with the bluefin and they got the heavy tackle and everything, the natural transition, if they want to catch something big, is going to be into that deep drop. And then once they start doing that, I think we'll get a real good idea of how much volume of swordfish is really around, because they are kind of fun to catch. And it is a whole different animal when you fish them the way that Anthony and I do. And, you're driving around and you spot them on the top, man, they're a beast. I mean, I'm telling you what, man, they whomp you. They kick your ass. And it's a completely different fish than the deep drop fish.
Yeah.
Like night and day, but they're still cool as heck. I'd still want to figure it out and go do it. Absolutely. But Anthony took a couple of beasts, and we didn't stand a snowball's chance, man.
That was like, I've been really lucky enough to have caught deep drop fish and surface swords, and I don't think you can even compare the way that they fight. I think the deep drop ones, they come up all wonky and discombobulated from the pressure change of the deep water and the surface temperature of the water coming from the cold to the warm and all these weird things. And it seems like guys that miss those first couple shots at the gaff, like when they're still all wonky, then the fish gets like acclimated to the surface temp and goes crazy and gives you like the real like swordfish fight that they're famous for. But I was wondering if you thought that the deep dropping is kind of like taking away the mystique of the swordfish, because it's always been the ultimate, most badass, highest challenge fish to catch on rod and reel, going back to the 1900, and the start of the tuna club, and seeing guys like Zane Grey and just all the most badass guys back in the day on the old tackle linen line catching these fish on the surface with that antique tackle, and then now guys kind of bringing them up all weird. And I don't know, like do you feel that at all, or do you just think it's it's just a cool way, and however guys can catch swordfish, great?
I'd say yes to that, because I do feel like it takes away some of the mystique. But yes, I do think it's still a cool way to catch them. And, fishing's fishing, and I'm a killer. I mean,
yeah, you are.
I like killing stuff, and I've spent my whole life, but I've always tried to do everything, so there was zero bycatch and rod and reel, and all that blah, blah, blah. But does it take away from some of the mystique? A little bit, there's a little twinge in me when I see all these guys posting swordfish, and, let me think, we got we got at least 4 guys burning in gyros 8 hours a day, maybe get a shot or 2. And then, on a good day, we'll find 3 or 4 or 5. And, but we're working really, 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 really hard at what we do. And then, Anthony's real good at getting bites. So our percentage is a little bit higher. There was a couple of years that he was getting a bite out of 1 out of every 3 fish that we presented a bait to. And I think we're back down to about 1 out of 5 or 6, which is still pretty doggone good. And then, you pull a bunch of those off, man, and you just lose them. And it's the one fish that repeatedly hurts your feelings, and there's just no way around it. They just hurt your feelings, man. And you do everything right, and they're doing all those crazy switchbacks, and you watch them rolling around, and then the damn thing will, you let it eat it proper and get the bait pretty deep, and the thing throws its stomach out, and you see the hook hanging in the end of the stomach, and you're like, oh my gosh, and or they get, you watch them chasing the bait around, and they're not great at. You think they're not great at catching them, but you see them all upside down and everything. I've seen them eat the bait upside down.
Really?
It's like, yeah, it's like just crazy stuff, and you think that they're not very crafty or quick or whatever, but there was one fish off Santa Cruz Island that Anthony baited it, and he does everything right. He doesn't keep his line tight, and the thing whacks the bait off the hook, brains it with a big old 11-0 hook, and I mean, he's got a lot of meat of that fish of that bait on the hook, and casts another bait out, whack, knocks the bait off the hook again. Find the fish, it won't eat. So, okay, we're going to go harpoon it. We got all our commercial licenses. So we go over and we harpoon it. We pull that fish up, and it's got the 2 mackerel in its belly.
Really?
And both of them were surgically hit right underneath the chin, right in the jugular vein, without another mark anywhere on the body. And that thing had just karate chopped it right in that little thin vein of the gills, knocked the bait off the hook both times, hit it in the exact same spot, and ate the bait. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So at times, not saying they're all like that, but
yeah,
that one was pretty much a dead eye, man. And
yeah,
he knew exactly what he was doing.
Anthony seems like he got, at some point, he got where he'd kind of like done everything else and had come to the realization that the swordfish is the ultimate challenge and ultimate conquest. And you guys were for I mean, I don't, you still are, I guess, but that was like your singular focus. That was, don't give a shit about stripies. You drive over them, and you guys were just out there burning eyeballs to catch the surface swords. And Anthony, obviously, I think, in current time has caught way more surface swords than anyone else. But the aggravation of that and going on to getting your guys' commercial permit and setting up the, what is it, like 3 casts, and then it gets the harpoon or whatever you guys do now. I think that's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it's 3, and then we teach it a lesson. But what so many times where the marlin are, that's where the swordfish are. That's one of the ways that if we were sword fishing commercially, we found us marlin early. That was an area we want to pay attention to.
Okay.
And so normally speaking, after 9 o'clock in the morning, we'll bait a marlin or 2. But if it's getting near the tide, if there's any tide, like between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, yeah, we pretty much drive right by them. Yeah, we'll drive right by the stripers and we'll stay focused on, we'll catch them right up. Like if they're right, they won't get out of our way, because the 92 is super nimble off the bow. And Anthony, he and I we've caught so many thousands of everything together. We get them pretty quick, really, really quick. And so if it doesn't take too much time out of the day, and really honestly, if we whip over and we catch one real quick, we still got 2 guys in the tower, and they're not watching what we're doing. They're still looking for swordfish.
Right.
And they don't get out of the glasses. They don't get out of the goggles at all. And so it really doesn't hurt us that bad, but we won't do some 20-minute battle on them or nothing.
And for Anthony, like he's still just so dialed on the surface swords that I imagine deep dropping has zero interest for him.
We tried it twice for about 30 minutes each time. And it was really funny. One time we were deep dropping and I found one finning. And so we had to wind everything up really quick and go over and bait it. But he still really enjoys the surface marlin fishing too, the sight fishing. And I think it's he gets to present the bait, and there's some skill in the casting and
Yeah.
boat positioning, and so yeah, he still digs it. We still dig it. It's getting to be a little bit of a lost art, but it's kind of hunting and fishing combined, and it's for sure one of my favorite ways of fishing, and Anthony's as well, for sure.
Yeah, we were talking, last year during the Masters when Jock caught 4 fish, we caught one. I think Webster caught one, and all up on that. I think Jock calls it the Ranger Bank, that zone there, right off, kind of by Yellow Banks area. That's not a secret, so I don't mind saying that. But they were, I guess, for this year. I mean, who knows if there's even going to be tournaments this year? But they were saying that they're going to have to change the points, obviously, to where a deep drop swordfish, I think you're going to it's going to be around what a stripey is, and then maybe a little bit more. And then obviously a surface caught swordfish will stay at that premium level because, last year showed, I mean, a lot of guys went out and caught swordfish that had never dreamed of catching a swordfish before. And, I've gone my entire life and caught 3 surface swords and not landed any of them. So I think, like, in tournaments at least, they're going to have to value that deep drop fish less than the surface fish. I don't even think you can compare the two.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. They definitely need to do that. And yeah, it's still, I think the surface swordfish is still the pinnacle of sport fishing, in my opinion, and just everything about it. I mean, the whole battle, it's gets my heart racing just sitting here right now.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, having had like all the success you've had in fishing and tournaments and everything, like, what does get you like most amped about being out fishing? Is it just being out on the water and being with your friends and glassing and looking for fish, or is it just certain types of fishing like surface swordfish fishing, and or do you still just have the love of fishing in general?
Yeah, I love of fishing in general, man. Anything that's biting, I don't care if it's bait. I like catching mackerel. I don't care. I love grouper fishing. I love bottom fish fishing. I love bass fishing. I like rock fishing. Yeah, pretty much. I still love it, and for sure, getting to fish with my buddies and my friends of all the different years and good people. It doesn't matter so long as everybody's out there to have fun and enjoy it, and we all go work hard at it. And those are the kind of people that I like to surround myself with. Everybody working really hard together as a team and having a good time and joking and, jabbing people. It's just, yeah, the
Yep.
absolute sitting here. I want to go fishing right now. I mean, let's go. And like I said, I don't care if it's mackerel fishing. I'll go out to the buoy at Newport Beach and sit there and want mackerel, man, and go through them and grade them and count them and listen to music and have a great time doing that. It's all fun. I like it.
I love it. And like you just said, I was just listening to you saying it, grading. You grade your mackerel. Is that something you guys do? You have your, like, is it by size, or how do you do that?
We got different tanks and they got different sizes, and some of them will go out for calicos and yellows or white sea bass, and then another tank will be all the marlin shooters, all the perfect size, and then another tank will have the swordfish ones, and then up on the bow we've got when Anthony's casting, we've got one tank that's full of greenies for throwing at marlin, and then we've got 7 or 8 swordfish baits swimming around in the other half, and he always knows the rods that are for swordfish are in front of the bigger baits, so that it's just goes up, picks up the rod, and that tank's got that particular bait in it. So it's all pretty automatic.
What do you kind of looking for with like for the perfect swordfish greenie? What size are you looking, like the mega jumbos or like that like 8-inch kind of
Halfway in between, a little bit bigger than you'd want to cast at a marlin. The really big ones, they seem like they kerplunk, they splash a little too hard, and the fish just don't dig it. And for whatever reason, it just kind of turns them off. It's just a little bit bigger than you'd want to cast at a normal marlin caster. That's the perfect swordfish bait. It'll still swim and try to get away, and that's super important on those swordfish. And you know, the baits that just lay there, not so much. And you know, Anthony's got a neat deal that he does where he teases them a little, you know, and we do some other stuff with the bait sometimes that I won't talk about right now, but
can't give away all your secrets.
I want to go back to that for a minute too. You know, we as far as grading stuff, there was times in the money tournaments back in you know, here locally, that if it was strictly a big fish tournament, if it was a small one, we'd drive right by them. We wouldn't bait them. We would go by dozens of fish a day and never throw a bait at them unless it was one that we felt was big enough to cast at. And you know, I remember hearing, oh, those guys missed that one. No, we didn't miss it. We just didn't want to waste the 10 or 15 minutes that we might find that big one.
Yeah.
Baiting that one, you know? So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to grading baits, grading fish, for sure.
I think it's like those little things like that, you know, really separate the teams that are constantly like the contenders from just the guys that are out there that, you know, are just hoping to get lucky. Because, you know, when I like learn about stuff like that, it just makes me smile, because I love guys that really are like super focused and put in the time and do all the little things like that, like grading the bait. And, you know, it's like going out and making bait. Like, it can't just be like, oh yeah, we're just gonna, you know, stop at the jetty on the way out and we'll just, you know, we'll make some bait and go. It's like, you know, I definitely know when we've had success, like, you know, we spend a couple days just on making bait and making sure we have a ton of bait and good baits. And, you know, sometimes you roll up to Newport Jetty and the bait's not there, and then what do? You know?
Yep. Then you gotta, you know, 50 other spots you gotta go look at if it gets tough. And then, you know, so many times too, you know, it's like lift pole in albacore. We've got a 10-foot rod blank that's rigged up just like a lift pole with a single hook on it. And that's really the best way to catch the bait. Just take your time, catch them one at a time. And as soon as they bite, you lift them out of the water and swing it straight into the tank. And there's no other, like on the sabikis. I mean, there's times if it's high production where we need to catch them 4 at a time, but that line rubbing on their side rubs the slime off, and it's just not the same bait as if you catch them slowly, one at a time, and just doink them in the tank and take your time, you know, let them calm down. Don't get them all in there gasping, swimming all over, bumping into each other. Just plunk one, you know, plunk another one. And sometimes you can fill that tank too fast. And, you know, there's certainly a lot to every aspect of everything that we do, for sure, man.
Have you guys, have you ever caught any surface swords using anything besides greenies? Have you ever caught one on a squid or, you know, some other weird thing?
We hooked some really big ones on live barracuda, and we lost all 3 of them. I didn't do it with Anthony, and you're not supposed to do that. They were shorts, and, you know, allegedly we used a short barracuda for bait, but and they weren't wonderful. And but I know a lot of guys use squid. We should be using more squid. We're probably gonna do some of that. I mean, with these drones these days, there's a ton of options you could do, huh? You could fly a drone over there with a release clip and skip a squid in front of him, you know, and you could do all kinds of stuff, man. And that'll probably be the next phase is getting guys that are good with drones doing that type of stuff.
I've seen some videos. There's actually there's a couple companies that make these clips, release clips, for the drones.
Yeah, we got them.
Yeah, man, with swordfish, with the bluefin. I I haven't seen any video of guys like I know some guys here that have it. I haven't seen anyone do it yet, but um, I have some drones. I'm looking forward to trying that at some point. But that's funny with barracudas. I've always heard since I was a kid that short barracuda, that's the ultimate swordfish bait. That's the ultimate swordfish bait. But I don't never have known anyone that's actually like used one and caught a swordfish. I think they did like back in the olden days, like the black and white tuna club photo days. They used a lot of a short barracuda was like the primo bait.
Yeah.
But I think you're the first person I know that's actually hooked a swordfish on one. And did they just gobble those things? Or they reacted different than like a greenie?
Well, I don't know. So that that was allegedly they piled on them, and we hooked 3 on them, allegedly, and but Marshall Morgan is the guy that showed me. They used to rig them and pull those things dead in front of them as a bait, and the ones that we caught allegedly were in with the bait when the bait came. And boy, I'm falsifying some stuff here. No, so anyway, yeah, they piled on them pretty good, man.
Yeah. Like, just because I know this will be interesting to people that listen, but what are some of like the kind of stranger things you've brought out of swordfish bellies? Like, what are you seeing, like mainly those fish eating, like those deep ones, and besides obviously squid, like have you found anything bizarre in swordfish?
A bird, Bill Finch.
Yeah,
Bill Finch.
that's bizarre.
Bill Finch cleaned one in '78 that had a bird in it. I was there on the dock when he cut it open, and the bird came out, a seagull, or I think it was a sea pigeon. I think it was shearwater. And Mike Muller told me he was on the Cherry Bank and saw a ginormous one eat a shearwater. Some of those
That's
lancet
crazy.
fish, some of those deep water lancet fish, and then one off of whites that we were in really shallow water, and its bill was all goofed up, and it was full of parasites, those long stringy ones on the outside of the body.
Yeah.
It had clams in its belly, and
No
we
way.
were never certain if it was rooting around down getting clams because its bill was all goofed up, or it ate something that had eaten the clams or what, but it had clamshells in its stomach. But that was one. And then
yeah.
Just ginormous squid that we pieced together that were taller than my deckhand Jeremy, and I think Jeremy's like 6'1" or something. It was taller than he was when we pieced it together.
I'm interested to see how the deep drop fishery plays out. Like I'm wondering if it's going to just become another. I think one of the beautiful things about it is it's another way for guys to get out and fish, and something that we can have every year, and it's kind of a long season. So like you said, these bluefin are not going to be here for forever. I think everyone's in consensus with that. But swordfish, obviously, there's going to be slow years and epic years, and but I think that it'd be interesting to see if we get where guys get really good at it, where if we could ever get kind of close to Florida, where you have a decent shot of getting one almost every time you go out.
Yeah, especially September, October, November, early December. Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, I mean, do you think like there's a chance that we could have it good enough where it's kind of like the Florida scene where they almost get a bite every time they go?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's got to be exciting for just people that or in the fishing industry in California. I mean, we went through some tough years, and from 2010 to 13, it was obviously the La Nina, and these bluefin were a savior in some people's mind. In other people's mind, it's been horrible because it's just, brought a lot of kooks into the scene. But yeah, I think the swordfish deep drop things here, I personally love it. I think it's fun. It's like deep water white sea bass fishing to me, and
Yeah.
a lot of people hate sea bass fishing, and if you hate sea bass fishing, you're probably not going to like deep drop sword fishing. That's my opinion at least.
Yeah. I see it taking off and getting more steady, and then those Makos are kind of fun to catch too. I mean, it's probably going to get to a deal where a guy's got one deep drop straight off the rod tip and a deep drop on a buoy, a few 100 feet away from the boat, and then another bait down for an opa, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe
For
one
sure.
on the surface for a Mako shark, and just stuff to keep you busy while the day is going on. And we pulled up to a Mako this last year right off the Kend up there at Catalina. It was a legit like 400-pound one.
Mm-hmm.
And we pulled up to it and threw at it with a swordfish caster, and thing took off like a wahoo and then flipped up out of the water and cartwheeled, right like 30 or 40 feet from the bow, and was doing all these weird switchbacks. It finally chewed us off on our swordfish caster, but it was fun too, man. It was a big one, and it thing lost its mind when we hooked it. That wouldn't be so bad while you're drifting to hook a big old fat Mako or something, let them go. But it's kind of fun.
No, when I was a kid living on Catalina, my dad, when things were slow, we would go catch Makos, and it was so much fun. People, I don't know, I think shark fishing's kind of like taboo these days. Maybe that's why guys don't do it, or it's just one of those things where, the guys don't even know that that's an option to go out there and mess around with those things. But dang, I agree. It's totally fun.
Yeah, all of it's fun, man.
One other thing I wanted to ask you, I know we're getting towards the end of our time here, but was what was the ultimate decision on Team Bad Company kind of retiring from competitive fishing? Did you guys just get over it? Like, you'd done it, you'd won everything, and you didn't really like the vibe of it, or what led you guys to kind of pull out of the money tournament scene?
That was Anthony's decision more than ours collectively.
Mm-hmm.
I still love it. I thrive on it. I'm getting back into it again, so to speak. I'm kind of getting my foot back door with Galati, and they've opened a few doors for me, and I'm talking to some people now, and Anthony and I have come to an agreement that I'm going to back away a little bit from the Bad Company day-to-day dealings, and we're actually just starting that this month in May, and I'm looking to put together. I would love to finish out the last few years I got in the industry, fishing the tournaments hard again, and trying to support it and bring it back up. It's unfortunate. I don't know. The fish kind of went away in California, but there's still plenty here. If you get out there and work hard,
Mm-hmm.
you're still gonna find loads of marlin. Sometimes, a couple of years they've been a little thin, but
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know whether the tech savvy iPhone instant gratification, push a button, get an adrenaline rush, if that's killed our fishermen or what the deal is. But I mean, probably the right thing to do would be, once you come on the boat, you got to put your iPhone in a basket and you can't touch it again till 8:00 at night. Would probably be a rule if I was a boat owner that I would want to do.
Yeah.
And I think everybody would get back to working hard and having a good time and enjoying their time on the water.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And we did talk about it the other day a little bit, but I'm sure guys are wondering, like, do you ever see a time when, like, that the big money tournament, Marlin tournament, could make a return, or is it going to go to a deep drop, big money deep drop tournament? Is that our future? I personally like it. Just I don't know if there's like the guys that are like into that anymore. There's probably a few boats around that are would love to do it, but maybe it's going to become like a deep drop swordfish deal, big money tournament.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'd never even thought of that, to be honest with you, but why not? I mean, if I don't know why the people on this coast I went back to the White Marlin Open for the first time last year.
Yeah.
The people from the Hooray invited me along, great people and a lot of fun. And what an event. I mean, they got rock bands playing every night. They got, people cruising up and down. I think probably the biggest issue we have is where do we put the boats? How do we feed the people? It'd be great to get Avalon back involved in it, but I know that their thought process is in a different direction. And that's kind of unfortunate because that is the place that all this stuff should be happening at.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up the White Marlin Open. I'm pretty good friends with Jim Moscow, who runs that tournament. Just a great guy. But yeah, I think most people know I'm in the tuna club, so I'm not allowed to fish money tournaments. But the idea of a deep drop swordfish tournament where you did it where you have a mandatory minimum, and you made it like where you had some conservation kind of elements. And Catalina, man, I've been working with JJ over there at the harbor, and they got their brand new most badass hoist that's going back on the pier this summer. And Catalina's been hit really hard by this pandemic and the economy over there. I mean, might be, and someone listening maybe will put together some killer deep drop tournament that's run out of Catalina, and maybe it can be a way to bring some money back into Avalon. And Catalina is the birthplace of sword fishing and tournaments and all that. So maybe something fun for somebody out there to explore.
Yeah, that's it'd be great if the people over at Catalina would hear something like that, to where we used to have 3 or 4 tournaments that fished out of there, or 5 tournaments a year, and what a great time for all the people. And it was great for, I think, the Catalina community, and some of the facilities got used. I mean, I don't know how often that, what's the
casino?
Yeah, the casino, where the casino was being utilized there upstairs, and we'd play the videos up there. I mean, those were some of the best days and the memories of my life, and for that all to get shut down and pushed to the side, I think it was a mistake. And I'd love to see it get back up again and promoted. And what better way to get out on the ocean, and the camaraderie. And even if it was for yellowtail and bluefin tuna and deep drop swordfish, make everything count. Everybody gets a chance to win it, whatever they want to do. And maybe have the numbers start out small, a couple $100 to get in or something, or a couple $100 for each division, and it would be great for the Catalina community to have that influx of people again.
Yeah. And I think, the swordfish numbers are good. It's not a fish that's really threatened right now. You'd be the best person to ask. I don't know if the commercial guys would be stoked about a big swordfish tournament, but that's just going to be something that has to get figured out over the next few years. Obviously, more and more guys are going to get into deep dropping. The deep buoy set gear stuff is, becoming more and more popular. It's going to be interesting. That's another dynamic that we're going to have to work out too, I guess.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about the minimum size, but see where it all goes there, brother.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate you doing this. There's a lot of little tidbits in there that I'm just laughing because I just love to be able to talk with guys like you, and I have the utmost respect for you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you out on the water, or hopefully getting to fish with you at some point. And good luck with your new venture with Galati, and just really appreciate it.
Yep. Anything, anytime, Chase. And if anybody's ever got any questions, I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. Just Google me, and it'll some contact will come up.
Yeah, and if you guys want to just we just scratched the surface today. Hop on Steve's Facebook, and he's been posting every day, part of this 10-day challenge of posting photos. There's some epic old photos on there, some hilarious stuff. If you dig into the comments, there's some gems on there, and I urge you to go on there and check it out. It's been really fun.
Okay, Chase, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate everything, brother, and I miss your dad.
All right, thanks so much, Steve, and look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.